Hello and welcome back to another Flute Tip of the Week. This week has been historic in terms of one of the largest countries in the world having a new political direction and a global movement in reaction to this in such a peaceful way. I'm not changing this into a political video. I'm not going to start a political discussion. It's just so amazing to see all these millions of people come together in peaceful demonstrations. It's very humbling to realize just how many people work towards getting the same kind of voice. And I think it's important to remember for so many reasons that just because there is one person who may threaten something, there will always be someone else to try to defend it. So I just hope that people will continue to try to work together peacefully and that we can all just move forward and find a direction that can bring everyone along and not leave anyone trailing behind. Anyway, speech done. This week we're going to talk about something that I bring up in so many of my lessons and is integral to our expressiveness as musicians, and that is how we use our articulation. Let's get ready to become articulate. Have as much an array of articulations to use as colors in your palette. This is something that can be very easily forgotten about in a lot of scenarios, because when you find an articulation that works, that is clean, and you feel it doesn't get in the way and allows you to move forward at a comfortable pace, it can be easy to just kind of ride on that and think, you know what, I've got that down, now I can just focus on everything else. But really, there is so much you can add to the worth of your music and its expressiveness and even how easy it is to play just by working out different areas to articulate in terms of the relationship between the palate of your mouth, the roof of your mouth, to your tongue, how you use different techniques in different scenarios. I'm going to put the link to my video on staccatos in the description for this video so that you're able to look at that again after you watch this and apply what we're talking about today to your staccatos as well. I just don't want to take time to go over something that I've already talked about in the past. One thing that can be very easily forgotten about is the worth of reverse double tonguing. I'm not saying this in terms of starting a really long articulated passage in reverse double tonguing, because I know that a lot of people aren't necessarily super comfortable with it, but is something that is incredibly useful for when you are trying to get a different kind of motion through dotted rhythm sections. For example, at the very beginning of the Mozart Concerto in G, we have this really big statement, but there is this one articulation that can sometimes trip us up, and that is when we have this rhythm. Now, at certain speeds, and with most people, it is fairly easy to be able to get the exact kind of motion you want just by using single tonguing. However, this is an example of a place where you could use your reverse double tonguing just for that one moment so that you can have a different kind of kick to the next beat. So instead of just going da, 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 which will either put equal emphasis on the two notes or even more emphasis on the shorter rhythm, or you can do da, da, ga, da, da. So to practice that, you can just very simply do da, ga, da, ga, da, ga, da, ga, da. This can also be helpful when you are doing quick passages that have a different kind of articulation pairing in terms of where the slurs and the articulated notes are going to be. So for instance, if you have, say, a very fast section of semiquavers, 16th notes coming up, and you have the first three tied, it'll be a lot easier to slur those first three notes and then go ga da ga da ga da ga da instead of da da ga da ga da ga da. It just makes it a lot more smooth. Next, we need to think about the placement of the tongue within the mouth. Depending on where you have your tongue based, it's going to have a different weight to your articulation. Typically, the farther back you have your tongue, the more emphasis is going to be, and the larger the accent is going to be. Because instead of just being a trap door for the air to escape through, it has to be very definite in terms of how you use your muscle to be able to release the tongue and allow the air to come through. But as you bring your tongue more forward and start moving it from the middle of your palate to the area of your palate that starts to gradually transition to where your teeth are, you get a much different tone and it gives you a much lighter sound. And this is very good for sections that require a bit more sparkle. Or if you prefer to think of it in terms of what country the music is from, typically for German music or Russian music, you want something with a bit more oomph. You want to have the heavier articulation, which would be in the middle of the palate. But for French articulation, where it's at a speed that is not too quick for you to single tongue, you'd want it closer to your teeth so that it can be something a little bit more light and allow the air to travel more smoothly. So a good way to practice this is to do 4 notes of one articulation, so 4 notes where you tongue farther back against your palate, and then 4 notes where you do this closer to your teeth. And you can also hear a very clear effect of the placement of the tongue on the sound you get in terms of your color. So you can get a much darker sound with a bit more bite with the tongue farther back, and a much lighter sound with a less harsh articulation when your tongue is closer to your teeth. Another thing that is important to have is confidence in your note outside of just relying on the removal of your tongue and the release of the air to be able to get the tone you want. So for this, we practice notes without using our tongue to begin them. This kind of exercise not only gives you the confidence to be able to play the low notes and not be afraid of your tongue getting in the way and forcing them to crack, or alternatively, not having the air pressure fast enough in the higher register to be able to keep them up the octave, but it also allows you to see how you use your support in your abdominals as opposed to just letting your articulation be what is the driving force of your sound. So that's basically, instead of going da, 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 you're going to be going ha, ha, ha. Let's do this on a G major scale. Finally, we need to talk about quiet entrances. For quiet entrances where you have to really sneak in, I definitely recommend using no tongue, just so that you can have a very seamless entrance that isn't suddenly defined, especially if you have either an entrance within a chord or you're completely alone and it's something that just needs to gradually become conscious to those who are listening to you. But sometimes you do need to have a very clear start to a quiet passage, but you want to avoid having a thud at the beginning of the note. So you can do this one of 2 ways. First off, you could do it by having your tongue in between your lips and then simply remove it while your air is starting to come out. Or you can have your lips closed and have them be parted by the air, and that gives you a kind of articulation instead of. So if you're someone who finds that you're still trying to get more colors into your playing, or you're having a little bit of difficulty starting to work into the darker or much lighter tones, learning to use your articulation in this way is going to be essential to having the variations that you want, and also that you need to be able to give a very diverse and more complete picture of the music you were trying to play. So again, that tip is have as broad a range of articulations as colors in your palette. I hope you find this week's tip helpful. This will be a fun thing for you all to experiment with and just see how far you can push your musical interpretations. And this is also something to really be thought about when you're playing contemporary music, because it can be so easy to just think harsh colors, light colors, as opposed to all the various kind of worlds that you can create just by where you're placing your tongue. One muscle, thousands of possibilities. I'll see you all next week. Flute happy, articulate happy. Not really going to do a funny talking head this week. Just wanted to say to everyone, be safe. In this kind of time, it's important to remember to be your best self, but not just on your own. Be your best selves when you are collected together. The only way you can ever get something done that can be meaningful is if you can make a difference along with the people around you. All these snowflakes together can create an avalanche. Be safe out there.